To the surprise of most of us, the past 2 years of COVID and the pandemic shutdown have been amazingly good for the design industry. As Americans spent more time at home, they began to want to upgrade and improve their surroundings, and the design industry boomed. Sure, there were supply chain issues and delays, working remotely wasn't always easy, and hiring new talent became difficult. But virtually every designer was busy, with many turning down work. But is that about to change? Inflation has hit, gas prices are reaching unprecedented heights, mortgage interest rates have risen, and the cost of monthly rentals are through the roof, and homes and apartments are not easy to find. Supply chain issues are improving, but now many of the big box and home improvement stores are reporting a glut of inventory, and their profits are down. What does all this mean for the high-end designer? I have with me today the heads of two major companies who cater to the trade market and have an in-depth understanding of its cycles, and who have been around long enough to have seen and survived some previous slowdowns. First up is Gale Singer, president of the Savannah-based brand Circa Lighting, which she founded in 1998 after working with her brother Andy, the head of Visual Comfort. With its 36 showrooms across the country, Circa Lighting has become the largest dealer of visual comfort lighting and represents 3 other brands, as well as a line of ceiling fans. And now things are coming full circle with the recent announcement that Visual Comfort and Circa Lighting will merge, and the siblings will once again be working together. More on that later. Welcome, Gale.
Hi, Michael.
I'm also fortunate to have with us Timur Yumusaklar, president and CEO of Schumacher and Co. He joined the 132-year-old fabric and wall coverings company in 2015 with the express aim of taking it into the 21st century. Working with the company's president, Benny Frohwein, and creative director, Dara Caponigro, he has expanded the firm into paint, bed and bath, and even a successful magazine, Frederick. The company has a major presence on social media and now issues new products on a weekly basis, which are available at its 18 showrooms and at design centers in Canada and Europe. Hello, Timur.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're both here. So, Gale, I want to start with you. I want to get a sense from both of you. We'll start with you. What your business was like for the past 2 years and what change you've seen in the last few months. Were you as successful as everybody seemed to be? Or, because the other thing about the design world is sometimes people only tell you the bright side. So tell me the truth.
The truth, well, I always say, to everybody, especially in our salespeople, the truth is the easiest thing to sell. And also the easiest thing to tell. So it has been very interesting, but it's been very good. Just like you said in your introduction, people are home. People finally came to the conclusion also after spending so much time in their home that this is really a place that they want to spend time, and it should be the way that they want to live in it every day. And so people looked around and said, why are we living like this? It's kind of like the irony of fixing your home up to sell it. Like, why didn't you fix it up?
Right. I've always said that, Gale.
Well, you were living in it.
So good.
I've never understood that.
It's the craziest thing.
Right.
So we were very fortunate that we work with amazing, talented, passionate, do whatever it takes to get it done people. And both internally and externally our customers, amazing. And, we're all spending a lot of time at home. We're more engaged. I never looked at Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time now because that's really how I got to hear from our community. And people were doing whatever it took to keep business going. So it was a very good time. We had to pivot to get everybody working from home. So we were fortunate that we were able to pivot really quickly, get everybody working from home. Our salespeople did not give up. And nor did our customer. So things were very good during that period. And especially when you're in the higher end, people are buying something somewhere all the time. Right. You just have to get them to buy it from you.
Right. And Timur, would you say the same with Schumacher? I mean, I was under Dara. You certainly were on Instagram even before COVID, and she really brought, that to social media and the web. But have the sales been strong through the 2 years? Because the other thing about fabric, and I mean, I know you also do Patterson Flynn rugs as well, but a lot of it is custom. So there is that, there were delays. I know delays, beyond the
Yeah.
usual 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 2019 was I think, in recent history, I have to say with our 130 or 40 years, but it was our record year in recent history. And then obviously we went into the pandemic. So I would say the beginning was very challenging, but I also would, definitely second what Gale said. It was a pivotal moment, right? Which I think with all of its challenges, and I think definitely a lot of really difficult moments for all of us. It was also it sparked a lot of new ideas and new innovation, new realignment on how to communicate, on how to work, how to rethink the home. So I think 2020 was definitely all in all, definitely not an easy year. I think the overall company still grew about 12% in the end. I think the Schumacher brand grew 20%. As you can tell, so the rug business is always a little bit more challenging because of the new orders are in is fun, right? It's but until you have to wait until you can actually record that as revenue. And then so 2021, yes, I think 2021 was, fireworks. And I would say with every fireworks, also sometimes be careful when you handle them, right? So I think that, our top line, the Schumacher brand was just really, really strong. I think we made very early the decision for the benefit, of our designers and the homeowners to buy a lot of inventory, right? So already in the middle of 2020, I remember in May 2020, we bought, really a lot of inventory already at the time because we were afraid of supply chain disruptions. And that just propelled, I think, our 2021 results, just way beyond. And I think it allowed us to really deliver, the reliability I think our design community, expects from us, but also I think deserves, right? So I think that's, I would say, I think in terms of working together, yes, I think what you said, Gale, I would see, right? I think it brought us really, it was so much easier now to connect. We did in the beginning, we did weekly town halls just to keep everybody together and everybody knew as we were learning what COVID meant, right? So to get everybody on that and also just to a sense of community. The last thing I would say in terms of macroeconomic at the time, and I think we're going to talk more about this differently or today more, I think that the home is something that follows our social life. Right. And so I think the one thing that has fundamentally changed is that all of a sudden, this ratio of adults being at home and awake has skyrocketed. Right. So all of a sudden, this idea of having an open floor plan with no doors whatsoever.
Yeah, that's been an issue.
I think whoever's selling doors probably had a resurgence, but but so I think, and I also think all of a sudden your needs are very different. I think I do think that commuting is a whole different ball game now. I really find it was the moment 2020 was the moment where physical distance became a whole got a whole new meaning and became less relevant, right? So up until that, history always was let's travel faster. We walked, we rode the horse, we took some sailboats, we took some steamboats, we took planes, and now we want to get supersonic planes. But all of a sudden, why do I have to travel at all? And I do think something major has happened, which I think will shift how homes will look like and how we all will live so fundamentally. And for us, most likely very excitingly,
I think that's great. And, one of the things that's impressive about the design industry as a whole, and you two are great examples of it, was that with the shift for people being at home, the demand was there, and you had to figure out how to meet the demand via Zoom, via technology, all the. But things are starting to change. I mean, I don't think remote work is going away. People are going back to their offices, but I don't think that's going away. But at the same time, there are no longer restrictions. You don't have to stay home, which you did for a long time. People are traveling more. Demand for travel is crazy. You get into an airport or whatever, you're stuck there for 4 hours now, no matter where you're going. You can't keep up. So people are shifting the way their money is, where they were spending their money. And I have had a couple of designers say to me, already the stock market has fallen, the war in Ukraine, all the upsets in our own country, that they're seeing their clients getting nervous and pulling back, maybe putting things on hold. Are you guys starting to see that in your business? Because I think of the design industry as sort of a leading indicator of a laggard indicator. High-end people, the people of great wealth, always have money to spend, but they're not immune to the larger social world out there. And I remember in 2008 and 9, a lot of the department stores, the few people who would go to the stores they want, the specialty stores, the high-end stores, they would give them plain brown shopping bags because it was almost embarrassing to be seen spending money at designer boutiques or Bergdorf's or whatever. So all of this is making me think people are getting skittish. So is that true? Gale, have you found that? Have orders slowed down?
We haven't found it yet.
Okay.
And I'll go back to 2008 and 2009 when everybody thought the world was coming to an end.
Panic.
And so it didn't.
Right.
So even in 2008 and 2009, we saw growth because we worked really, really hard. And we work really hard every day, regardless of what's going on, so that when times like this happen, we haven't sat back for the last 2 years and go, oh my God, business is so great. We don't have to go out there and call on any customers. We get up every day and do what we're supposed to do every day. And we say, thank you for the abundance. And then we're prepared when maybe the growth isn't, as great as it's been, for these last 2 years.
And Timur, what about you? Because certainly rug orders and even fabric orders have to come in pretty early on in the design process because they have to be made. Yeah. Are you noticing any sort of slowdown or skittishness on the part of your designer clients?
Yeah, I would not say skittishness, right? I do think that what we can see is that, in the very high-end custom rug part, it is still very strong. I think we're still actually at record levels in terms of order intakes. It's just not as strong as it was last October, right? So I have a little bit of a hard time to say was October because that was a whole different planet, I would say. I have a hard time to exactly say what's currently actually a new normal, so to say. But I do see in very expensive rugs that maybe someone says, okay, well, let's hold on for 1 second to see where this is exactly all going. But in overall, I would say by far our biggest hindrance is supply chain, right? So I think we have still so much more demand than we can fulfill. So that's actually not yet the biggest concern. And I think what Gale, you said, I think is very important because I think that, it's these moments, and I think and that's what I find particularly challenging about these 2020, 2021, 2022. They were all a little bit chaotic years in their own way, because I would say,
yes, the new normal is not normal for long.
Right, and so I think running a company in a little bit more of a chaotic outside shocks is actually a little bit tricky, because I would always say that, I think our teams have done a fabulous job and are still doing hard at work to really tighten everything up, right? Because I do think we have to be super agile, super nimble, use modern technology to optimize, right? So because when the times comes, if you start doing anything when the times come, it might be too late, right? So It's always in the best years you have to work the hardest. That's my philosophy on that. And so because then you have the moment to set yourself up for success, right? And so so I do think that's very important. I can see that there's some skittishness. I still think that for us at least, supply chain, particularly ports, I think are a particular problem. And then, freight cost as just as a cost item.
Well, I've read that the shipping costs have started to come down a little bit, but, at the same time, you have to...
Fingers crossed, Michael, on that one. I don't know.
A little bit. I don't know. I mean, but they quadrupled or something. I mean, the cost of shipping a container from Europe.
They did quadruple, and some of them are coming down.
Correct.
A little bit. But still, there's backlog.
That doesn't help with sale. That, obviously you have to absorb some of that cost somehow. Right. So you either absorb it in margin or you absorb it by raising prices. And clearly everybody had price increases, several of them, over these last 2 years. You had to.
Right.
And, really in the higher end market, it's a little bit easier. You don't have to increase your price that much to absorb it. In the more popular and lower end market, when a container goes from 5,000 to 20,000 and you're selling a $5 item, how do you absorb that? It's impossible. So it's a lot trickier.
My other question is, as we move ahead, and I do think designers are, the stock market, which affects a lot of high-end design customers. Let's face it, a lot of them are in finance or have big investments, has fallen. What would be your advice to designers whose clients are a little bit skittish, and also in terms of their own firms? Because I know, 2008 and 2009, a designer told me what a horrible thing he had to go through because he had to lay off like 8 people on his staff. And he said it was the most horrible thing he'd ever had to do. And I've had to fire some people in my day. It's not a fun or pleasant thing to do.
It's the worst.
And then when things picked up again, he was very reluctant to hire people back because that memory of laying people off was so vivid in his mind. So is there any way to sort of anticipate that kind of change? What do you think designers, your customers, should be thinking about now in terms of sustaining their firms and, keeping their clients happy?
Well, I think that they really had kind of the same thing 2 years ago where nobody knew what was going to happen, but they pushed through. And I think that's the key, is you have to keep on going. So if you have a client that is saying, I need a minute, chances are they're going to see, just like we all watch our accounts go up and down every day, but we're not losing everything. They're not going to lose everything. And they're still going to want that rug or that wallpaper or that lighting fixture or the couch or whatever. So it will come. Maybe they'll postpone it a little bit, but the idea that it's going to stop and run dry and nobody's going to buy anything anymore, I think that's not going to happen. I surely hope it's not going to happen. It never has happened, right? Even in the worst of times, people still got out there and bought something. And like I said, it's just going to be harder. You're just going to have to go out there. But I don't think business is going to stop. And you just may have to think of things to be of more value to your customer, or maybe you'll have to do things a little bit differently so that your customer is still going to buy that item. Maybe it's, so I'll have to pass my discount on and just get my hourly fee in order to keep this thing going.
That's certainly true what you said about when the pandemic first struck, but that sort of panic or change only was much short time. Within 3 months. I know
short time.
A very quick
way that it was in
turnaround.
2008 and 2009. The world did not come to an end, and people continued to buy things.
But Gale, a lot of firms did go out of business. A lot of businesses, people lost their jobs. People got laid off.
I'm not minimizing the impact. It was a bad time.
Right. So I guess my question to you, Timur, is: do you see this current slowdown on the horizon as more like we saw in 2020 or more like we saw in 2008-9? You have a finance background, so hopefully, you've been advised. So I'm not asking you to look into a crystal ball unless you have one handy, but, how are you approaching this from Schumacher's point of view? Are you considering it as more of a blip or something that's going to be sustained?
I think it's more of a blip, in my opinion. A blip, it might be a little bit too short, right? But
a longish blip.
I don't think it's because, right? I think maybe I'm generally like a half full guy, like a more like of a, optimist, I would say. So, take that. But I would say if you look at like some, I think very important trends, right? And so I think one of the most astonishing trends I find is, for example, the undersupply of new housing and new houses built in the United States on a year-over-year basis is very consistent and has lasted over by now, I think probably almost like since the last housing bubble burst. And it's probably like, still a hangover, right? So, one, right? So, and I think I don't know the exact numbers, and I'm not an economist, but I think it's like in the millions of like housing units missing, right? And I think that expands to the higher end and the lower end. So I think that's one, right? The second thing is I do hope, and I think if this, quarter is, our GDP shrinks, I think we're technically in a recession, so we might be already technically in a recession, just don't know half the data yet. But I don't see yet that this is going to be a very long lasting one, because the key inflation drivers, are very clear, somewhat be able to isolate. And I also think they come in in a time where it's very important to, and where I think the labor market asks for that, to raise wages. And so in that context, I think that, the way I look at this is, I think it's more of a blip. And the last thing is just, I do think we are in our industry and the product we help to supply that goes into one of the most important experiences, our homes, is fundamentally changing. And I think that's the most fundamental change I think that's happened to homes in over 50 years. And I think that will give us a groundswell of smaller projects, bigger projects, new builds. A lot of I think we're going to see a record level of people would like to move, permitting they can find, a new home.
Right. It's the lack of inventory. It's the
right. But I think it's much better if it's if there's a lack of supply rather than demand. And I think what we're looking at is we're looking at a lack of supply, not demand. Even demand might be coming down. And in that case, I would say that's better, and that should make it blip-ish. Right. I think that's what you call it.
Right, a longish blip, we'll say. Yeah. So that makes me feel good. I'm glad you're so optimistic, Timur.
I hope I'm right.
Stop watching the news.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's my best advice.
That is not good advice. Stop watching the news. But Gale, I want to ask you: are there particular things that you're doing as a firm? I mean, in terms of your showrooms and all of that. And I want you to tell me a little about you and Andy back together again, to get taking the show on the road. I think that's so exciting. Was that something that you did thinking that things were going to slow down, or was it just something that was inevitable was going to happen?
So we have really been one company since 2014. We came together as one company since 2014, but we remained operating under separate names.
You fooled me.
Yeah, I know. And at that time, and we, through the years, kept on discussing this name, right? I mean, we've created a brand that I believe is pretty, beloved out there by the people that do business with us. I certainly love it. Right?
I think it's great. I love it. And I redid my house in Connecticut. It's all visual comfort, Circa lighting,
right. And so for the last, 2022 minus 1998 is a lot of years. Everything that you purchased from us arrived to you in a visual comfort box.
True.
And then we started telling the story. Brother, sister, maker, distributor. We stopped not, we started telling the story. And now, as we continue to grow and really have a pretty robust growth plan, to get behind one brand makes so much more sense. So right now we support visual comfort, generation lighting, tech lighting, Monte Carlo fans, Seagull lighting, and Circa lighting. So we have 6 Instagram accounts. We have 6 email account. We have 6 of everything. 6, different brands that 6 websites. It's a lot.
That's a lot to maintain.
And visual comfort also has a very powerful name in the market. So the idea of getting behind one brand just made sense for us at the time. And because visual comfort is the maker, it made the most sense to get behind that brand.
That makes sense now because to consolidate everything, because if things do slow down, this way you've got much more control and not 6 little puppies you have to look after, but,
right.
The one big dog. It makes sense.
Right.
And Timur, what about you? Because Schumacher also has different brands. You even have a paint brand now, Backdrop. How are you thinking about this? I know you put out new designs constantly and the team is great on social media and your emails and make it very enticing. And I get all that stuff on my emails and my Instagram feed. But are you also looking at, I don't know, reducing the number of SKUs that you have or focusing more? What do you think is going to be the big challenge for you in this year ahead, which was most likely going to contain a longish blip?
I would say that, supply chain is definitely going to be still one, right? I think that's, once that, because it's just like it creates a lot of noise. I think, we're literally working day and night to go for, a customer experience that's really exciting, right? And I think that's just with supply chain, you sometimes have to sit even longer for that,
especially rugs, I'm sure.
Well,
oh my
there
God.
was a moment where we said, if this keeps on going, we need to get, we need to find someone with a plane to kind of bring our rugs out of, because it's just really getting difficult. But no, I think the challenges for us are, I think we're now approaching, our next level in terms of utilizing and experiencing technology, right? So I think we're now, we have relaunched, I think, in the last 12 months, almost all of our websites. They're now sitting on a data lake. I think we're trying to learn more about our customers. We're trying to find better ways on how we can serve our customers. I think that's what's really coming next for us, right? I don't know if our customers want to sell by, with cryptocurrency, who knows? And I don't think that's it. But I do think what's very important is that, you can pay, with Apple Pay, you can pay however you want. You can pay on your phone, you can get the tracking wherever you want, you can get Inspired, which is I think next we're going to relaunch a new search algorithm on the Schumacher website, So I think there's a lot there, which I think will help, in twofolds. One, really for our customers to experience more, having much more tangible feelings of what they see, much more, transparency, easier ways to communicate with their clients. And then also really empowering our teams internally, right? So really, where you feel why, do I still have to do this all and press so many buttons? And then it's much more seamless. Because I do think that, I think technology can be so wonderful, and innovation is one, I think, the most, I think really, I think that's one of the most exciting things I think there is. And I think, and so bringing that and really further implementing this and further living with it, I think that's going to be the biggest opportunity. And as with any opportunity, it's probably also going to be a challenge now and then, I'm sure.
Well, it's interesting what you were saying that because, it used to be anything to do with to the trade design was as far from an impulse buy as you could get. But now with Instagram and all that, still you're buying fabric, you have to know how many yards you need. You have to, have somebody, but it's still, I think it creates excitement. And it's interesting to me that when people see it, they want it. And I guess part of both of your jobs now is to make sure that your clients, the designers really, but their clients also see this and know your brands. And is that something that you think, Gale, that you're going to invest more in social media and doing all of that stuff to keep the demand constant? Because as you were saying, Timur, it's much better to have the demand and not the supply than to have the supply and not the demand. You know?
Correct. So you constantly have to be investing in that. I mean, everything, whether it's Instagram, Pinterest, SEO search, all the things that you have to do to keep in front of your customer and to segment them and to know where they are. It's an enormous investment. And you have to constantly be fresh and keep thinking about new things and ways to engage them. But you've got to get in front of everybody, because even if you're using an interior designer, you need the consumer, their client, to know about you and want their designer to find out where you are and purchase that fabric. So you kind of have to find everybody that's in your wheelhouse.
Right.
And it's an enormous investment.
And it's really changing. Both of you are changing what it means to be to the trade, which I think is so interesting because, obviously you have your showrooms and design centers and all of that, but you both are showing your work on social, Schumacher, Patterson, Flynn on social media. So people are aware of it and want to buy it. So I guess the question to me is, how do you keep your designer client relationship strong and not have the designers feel that you're undercutting them by making stuff? You sell on Chairish. I know both of you have products that are available, have been available on Chairish and all that. So people don't have to go into a showroom in the way they used to or hire a designer in the way they used to. So is that going to be a challenge to your designer clients moving ahead? And how are you going to handle that?
Occasionally it will be. Occasionally the designer is not going to be happy when we go on sale. So we handle that in a very sensitive way. We let them know when we're going on sale. And we usually give them, depending on their price level, another bump so that they can still make their margins, because they're all about margins. That being said, and this is probably not going to be very popular, but
can't wait.
The interior designer also has to realize that things are changing and that their client has access to everything in the palm of their hand.
True.
And so really what's going to be interesting, and I say that being very protective of our trade accounts, and because we know that they're everything to us. The other part of that for the interior designer is they need to also explain to their customer the value that they bring to the process.
I've been saying that for years.
You want the discount? You want to you go get the best price. You place the order. You check it in when it gets there. You try and get it returned when it comes in wrong and you don't have a relationship with the vendor and they're going to charge you a restock fee, or they're going to tell you, no, we're not going to take it back. It was customized in its final sale.
And then once you get it, you're going to get it installed? Right.
That the interior designer brings, they need to, make sure that their customer, their client understands you try and figure out what all this is supposed to look like together. Totally. And have it, you hired me for a reason. And so if the client doesn't understand and appreciate that, they're probably not a good fit for the interior designer.
I've always said if people hire a designer to be their personal shopper, they don't understand what a designer does.
No.
It's crazy. But Timur, obviously Schumacher is probably more heavily to the trade than Circa lighting or visual comfort is, although you're largely to the trade too, Gale. But so how do you protect that even as you make people more aware of it as it becomes a popular brand? Even you have Frederick magazine, which is so beautiful and it entices people to want to do, your social media feed. Has that been an issue for you in terms of designer trade? Because I think I'm worried that when there's a slowdown, if there's a slowdown and it's longer than 6 months or 8 months, that designers may start to get resentful of clients being able to go and get things, although, there's no turning back with technology. How do you approach that, and how do you protect your designer clients?
Yeah, so one, I think, I would say, for me, I think a lot of that starts actually, I think, with some unclarity, I think, about the tremendous value interior designers bring to the table, right? Because sometimes I find interior designers have a little bit the problem of preventative medicine. Nobody wants to pay for it, but once you need an MRI, everybody says, sure, I'll give you $20,000, right? So, instead of just trying to figure out never to use an MRI. And because I think what, they bring, one, I think they're true artists, and I think it's really about the composition, but also, beyond that, they get discounts, which normally, as an average homeowner, you don't always have access to. Yeah, you can do cell shopping, but then you got work with patchwork. But also, I don't even know what a painter would ask of me, to paint a room of mine, or my house, or what paints do I know, right? What's the right outside paint? What's the right fabric? Lighting. I think lighting is such a wonderful element to beautify your home and really give it depth and feeling. But do you know how to do this, or are you just going to do recessed lighting everywhere, right? So, and so I think it's and it's very expensive, I think, as a homeowner. And I think unless you're a naturally talented, and maybe you should be an interior designer, I would guess that every homeowner ends up with a more expensive product and a worse product. That's why cars are made by German engineers. I'm a German engineer, so just for that. But but that's, I think, why that is. And I think so that's one, right? And so I think we fundamentally follow this idea. Every average home is probably probably 500 to 2,000 items that go into the decoration. Do you know how much work it is to make it all look good, right? So I think, and we do celebrate that. So I think Frederick is a very important part, right? That's why we invest so much into our social media. That's why we have Freddie, because I do think that we want to celebrate it, right? So, and I think that is really, really important, because it is, if you just think about all the important memories we have at home, and now we work from home. Now, what has fundamentally changed with Instagram and TikTok, how many more, peak holes or something you have all of a sudden to look into homes. Homes are going to be so much more front and center of what we do. They're going to be much more of a representation who we are. I really think that, not just because I'm an optimist, I do actually think that the fundamentals going to elevate the experience of the home so much more. The other thing is, and I think that's I think what, you said earlier, Gale, I think is true, right? I think there's a little bit of a challenge, I think, for companies who are predominantly to the trade of brand awareness. I'm still, and I'm not sure this might be popular or not, depending probably on the audience, but I'll say it anyway. Did people leave by and far that Restoration Hardware as a luxury product company? Makes me, it's not. Restoration Hardware is a great company and they do a fabulous job. Don't get me wrong, but the product is mass produced. So you don't get an individual customized experience, right? It's not top quality, because I can tell you this, because doing this every day, there's definitely one level up to that at least. But so many people think it because all of us are hiding in, design centers, quote unquote. And I think that's, what I'm always a little bit envious of Circa Lighting with all their stores outside, and customers can experience us and they can say, I really love this Schumacher product. I love this backdoor paint. Or they can say, I don't, that's fine. But at least they have an opinion to us, right? And so I think there is for us, just in terms of pure, survival and just inspiring the homeowner, I think that we have to get known better, because otherwise we're all just going to have a Restoration Hardware interiors.
The thing about being exclusive to the trade is, like you said, people don't know you exist. And I've had this conversation before where the design centers many of them are now open to everybody, but so they can be open to everybody, but maybe everybody doesn't get to buy at the same price.
I think that, price consistency, and I think particularly, our price points. No, I don't, we don't want to be on promotion. We don't want to give you a discount. It is what it is. We put all everything we have into our products. And I think they beautify your home. They really make a difference. And so with all of our, direct channels, no, there's no discounts whatsoever, right? Because I do think that would, I think, start making it difficult. The second thing I would say, and I think that's oftentimes, I think, overlooked, in my opinion, is how wonderful of a client base and customer segment interior designers actually are. Right. One,
Amazing.
just for what they do, because like they're just true artists. And I have to say, like, if you have someone, particularly like, we have like so many fabrics, that's like how our business model works. But if you get someone who does something really special with something you haven't seen before, it does light up your, someone takes like a heirloom couch and reupholsters in something a little bit more edgy, but like also really exciting, makes your heart, take a step, like an extra step. The second thing, they're very loyal. And we love working with them. It's like almost like oftentimes like long-term friendships. We have so many customers, multi-generation, partnerships. And they know what to do with our product. You need to know how you do a curtain, how do you do like, shades, how you do it below. And they come back, and they come back several times a year. An average homeowner comes only back every, I guess, 7 years or so. So, so I don't know. I love that. I really like it. Just even like from an artistic standpoint and from a math standpoint, I love the interior designers, I have to say.
100%. And go try and pick out a fabric from a fabric house.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
I mean,
it's even overwhelming for me. Don't worry.
Yeah. I mean, what you guys said about you don't hire a designer to buy stuff for you. That's not what a designer does. But I do think, Timur, as you said, to the trade, these designers are changing. I mean, the business has changed so much in the past 25 years. I think it used to be that a designer would bring to their client, here's the options. Now the clients come to the designer saying, look at all these options. This is what I like. But partly because Schumacher has fabulous social media and websites, Circa, when you did your showroom at 200 Lex, you didn't go put it on the 11th floor, Gale. You have it on the ground floor with all those window space. It's dazzling, and people see it and want to know and want to have it.
Right, because we're open to everybody. We always have been. We always will be.
Right, and even if you have a designer, it helps the designer. And I think with this potential slowdown, longish blip that we see coming, I think that maybe. I hope you guys are so right. But maybe the designer has to embrace the knowledge that the client has and work with that and not make it be about price, but to be about, as we were saying, creating atmosphere, having everything installed at the right time, everything working, installing lighting, as we all know, is not easy. Making sure the sofa's not too big for the room. All those primal things. Where's the light switch go?
Right. But Micah, what I think is a very interesting thing about this, I think like what's actually the product I think the interior designer is selling and what are we helping them to create, right? And I do think that what has changed, it's going from a big reveal to much more an adventure, a joint exploration, a joint getting to know things. It's where, it's kind of like a little bit more you're going like on a travel tours and you have like an expert guide with you. And that's kind of like because they tell you, here, you don't see the lion, but I do. I'll point it out to you. Great, right? And then and I think that's what I think has, like change. And I think that's what's so exciting is that, it's much more of a building together. And I think designers are becoming like the highly educated and much more trained, guides. And it all basically ends up in a wonderful kind of like final, house to live in. But I do think, I would say, I think like homeowners that are interested in their house is actually quite nice because most likely also going to spend more. And so I think if I don't know, I think that's exciting. I think that's definitely changing. But I also would say, Schumacher used to have like showrooms on 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue. So there was a time before design centers too. So I think I think it's just a little bit of a,
maybe it's coming full circle,
so we'll see.
Well, I think you need both, right?
Right.
So, and we're in both. So,
right. And you're dealing with different clients. You're dealing with the design.
So mostly the people that come into 200 Lux are interior designers. And that's the nature of that building. And you're right, we wouldn't be on not even the 2nd floor of a building because we want street access for everybody. And that's been our concept. But the designer, they're buying lighting, they're buying fabric, they're buying furniture, they're buying cabinets, and for them to be able to have a collection of all those things in one place with or without their client with them is a convenience.
And
for them.
Can I add one thing to that? Because I think that is actually on the point of design centers is interesting. What I wish for design centers, and actually where I think my willingness to pay rent would go up for, if they would have really powerful social media activities, a powerful e-blast, if you look at the Instagram accounts of most design centers, I think there's a different way. It's not just real estate anymore, right? It has to become much more promotional, right? For example, the design center in London actually just this week is actually put on a great show house setup, right? So where in their new atrium they built, which is interesting, where it's the Schumacher house designed by. Right, so they're making an effort and they're investing into it. And I think we had to spend 25,000 pounds, I think, on that or something about that. But it was really collaborative with the designer. It would celebrate the brands and it drew in designers and homeowners alike.
It was all over social media too.
So, and I think that's So I think I don't know. I think Gale said it earlier. I think foot traffic alone. I don't think you want to pay for that just alone anymore.
Right.
So
Right.
Right. No. Even in London, at the design center in London, we're outside.
Maybe that kind of visibility and Schumacher's visibility on the social media, it inspires some people to want to walk in and buy a lamp. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm sure it does. But it maybe also inspires somebody who walks by to think, oh, this is dazzling. I need to get some help to make me have a home that's equally as dazzling and go through all these many options and pick the right ones for me. So I think that, especially in this next 6 months or so, designers are going to be very smart who think about their clients as coming to them with information that they will help them make sense of and take the best of. And knowing about brands like Schumacher, Patterson Flynn, Visual Comforts, is only to the benefit of the client and therefore a benefit to the designer. So it's going to be
100%.
It's going to be so interesting what happens in the next 6 months. But I really want to thank my wonderful guests, Gale Singer and Timur Yumusaklar, for coming here, projecting into the future and telling us how they're going to handle the longish blip ahead. And don't give up hope, right? Right, Timur?
Never give up hope.
We don't give up
hope. Give up hope. Right. Thank you very much, Michael, for having us.
Again, thank you very much for having us.